Hey, real estate rock stars. It is Christina Leavenworth, and today we are talking to Dan Rochon. And his claim to fame is he's had no broke months as a real estate agent. And he started back in 2008. We all know that real estate roller coaster where things are crazy and then it's crickets. Well, he has figured out the workaround to all that and how to succeed with no broke months. Without further ado, we are joined with Dan Rochon. He is a mindset genius, and he's going to be talking to us today just about some tips to just get through the world of real estate. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm fantastic. We can stop the show right now. I mean, it's not every day that I am called a genius. So thank you for that compliment.
Well, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But I know you've been on the show before with Pat Hyben as well as Shelby and Aaron. So we're excited with what you're going to bring today. But just so for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Chrissy. My name is Dan Rochon. I specialize in helping real estate agents have no broke months. I've been a real estate agent for myself since 2007. And, I've done a lot of really cool things. I owned a Keller Williams brokerage as an operating partner for 10 years. I bought that, 18 months after I got my license and, different joint ventures, that type of stuff. But I would say that the thing that I am most proud of in my career that, as I look back over almost a 20-year career that I'm proud of, and it's been the biggest struggle is I've had as a real estate agent through, doing different things such as a coach, and brokerage owner, et cetera, is that I've had as a real estate agent during this entire career, no broke months personally since 2008. And so just to have that consistent, predictable income through year after year is something that I'm grateful for. And I would say that that's the one thing that I'm most proud of, and the thing that I help others to be able to help them to achieve the same.
Yeah, that's something we talk about in real estate all the time, the roller coaster, where you're
Yeah.
so busy, your hair's on fire, and it's nuts. And then it's like, zero deals. How am I going to pay my mortgage? And a lot of agents struggle with that. So, how were you able to get through 2008? Not a good time for a lot of people with no broke months.
Well, first of all, when you say your hair on fire, I long ago lost my hair, and so I did have hair in 2008. However, originally I went my first 6 months without a single sale, zero. I was drowning, and within 18 months, as I mentioned to you earlier, so 12 months after my first sale, I was able to buy the brokerage that I worked for, and I did it by just simply. And if you're listening to this right now and you're taking notes, this is going to be the simplest advice, yet the most important, vital advice that you can receive, which is I simply 5 days a week for my entire career, unless I'm taking a vacation, 1 to 3 hours a day, I have done my job. And the definition of a real estate agent's job is I define that in five different categories or five different actions. So number one is to lead generate. Number two is to convert those people that you meet when you're lead generating to meet with you for the purpose to get hired. And number three is to then go and meet with them to get hired. Number four is to negotiate. And number five is to practice prescription role play. So simply as a salesperson, I have spent 1 to 3 hours of my day, every single day of my career, 5 days a week, doing my job, which is again, is to lead generate, convert those leads to meet with me, attend the appointments to get hired, negotiate, and practice my scripts and role play.
Okay, a lot of people out there are going to be like, how the heck did you do that in 1 to 3 hours?
Well, for about 8 years of my career, I taught a real estate principles class. And in the state of Virginia, which is where I reside, they call it the Virginia Salesperson's Certification. The name of the actual license that we have is salesperson. So if you're going to be a salesperson, committing to 1 to 3 hours a day of your craft, which is sales, should actually seem sort of like a basic criteria,
Mm.
because what a lot of agents do is we go to classes to learn how to do Canva or We go to networking events where there's 50 other agents there, which is great to be able to know agents. It's great to be able to know marketing, et cetera. But the basic root of our profession is sales.
Mhm.
And so if you look at that's the basic, like, so that's what we do. Only doing it 1 to 3 hours a day, from my perspective, seems a little bit, it seems like inadequate, to be
Yeah.
candid with
Yeah.
and the reason why for me it's only 1 to 3 hours a day is because hopefully, I'm going on 1 or 2 appointments the same day. And so like a perfect day for me would be, I wake up in the morning, I do, go to the gym, I do my mental health and my physical health, my spiritual health. I start my business day at 9 a.m. with a meeting with my team members and from 9 to 9:30. At 9:30, I begin lead generating. I lead generate from 9:30 to noon. And right now we're recording this. It's 12:17 p.m. I just finished 17 minutes ago my job. I unfortunately don't have any appointments this afternoon, right? But again, my perfect day would be to lead generate from 9:30 to noon and then go on 1 or 2 appointments every single day. And if you're able to do that as a business owner, as a salesperson, then you're able to have no broke months. I mean, that's a simple recipe, one of which unfortunately, few people follow.
Do you
Or
ever
maybe it's
cheat on
fortunate. It's
yourself?
fortunate for those of us that do follow it. Sorry to overtalk you there.
Do you ever cheat on yourself?
No.
I think that's a big key, because I'm a team leader as well, and we talk about this, and they always find ways to book their appointments during their prospecting time, or they
Yeah.
find other things to put in there, and it's like, "No, you have an appointment with yourself during that time period."
Yeah. Let me edit that answer slightly. Excuse me. I said no, and you heard how fast I said no. If in a rare instance I do need to edit that, then I replace it.
Okay,
And a rare instance would be if there's somebody that's flying in from Toledo, Ohio, and they're going to be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow for 2 hours, and they want, and they want to buy or sell a home. I would take that appointment, and then I would take my afternoon that I would normally go and meet with them, and I would replace the lead generation then. But it would
got
be
it,
non-negotiable that no matter what, it's 1 to 3 hours of lead generation every single day. That's non-negotiable.
got it.
The other piece of that is I do take time off from time to time, vacation. So vacation plans, that's fine. I also, I also teach or in classes. So I guess the asterisk to that would be I allow for myself to teach or to attend classes. I allow myself to take vacation but all of that's planned.
Got it.
And in the rare instance when I take an appointment and I allow for myself, if it absolutely has to be, then I'll replace it in the afternoon. I'll go in the appointment in the morning and I'll be generating in the afternoon. I've seen so many agents um, replace it in the morning or fill in the slot in the morning to not lead generate, and they never replace it, and then that becomes a pattern. And
Yeah,
so if you're listening to this right now and your pattern is that you're not lead generating 1 to 3 hours a day, then you're responsible for that. That's your choice to make. And if you're non-negotiable in your standards with yourself, as Christina asked me, and I answer it in a nanosecond, no, I am I'm not, I don't negotiate that. But I did then share like, okay, well, here's the few exceptions. But in every one of those exceptions, that's a pre-decision that I've made.
got it. I liked how you said that we are salespeople. I think a lot of realtors forget that sometimes. They forget, like, I got into this, it's sales and it's talking to people, it's reaching out. When you're prospecting, what are you doing? Are you cold calling? Are you calling past clients? What does that look like?
Yeah. So today I have several inside sales agents who I work with, and I spend the majority of my time in the second box, which is lead conversion. When I was early in my career, I spent all my time in the first box, which was lead generation. And so when I started my career, I have something that I coined, which is if you have no business, you have no business doing anything except to seek business. And the first few years when I was a real estate agent, 2007, 2008, 2009, I would spend probably 8 to 10 hours a day lead generating. I was in my, at the time I was in a brick and mortar brokerage, and I'd call walking around the block. There was a training room in the center of that brokerage, like a square of a hallway that went around the outside of the brokerage. And I would get this, I would plug my earphones in. Okay. I would plug my earphones
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
right? They weren't AirPods.
Yeah.
And I would I would get my clipboard, I'd walk around that block for 2, 3 hours at a time, and I'd take a break and then start back up 2, 3 hours at a time. And so I've spent all my time in lead generation. Today, because I have a full funnel, it's mostly lead conversion. If you ask where the business comes from, it comes from a variety of sources, from expireds to we do a lot of advertisement in We Buy Houses.
Mhm.
We do Facebook ads. We have relationships with referral partners like Clever and OpCity and UpNest, and all the basic ones. And past clients, we do client appreciation parties. I do YouTube marketing. You can check that out on my Greetings Virginia channel. And so there's just a variety of ways that we find business. But what I would suggest to somebody listening to this is to find, if you're struggling of where to find business, then first take a look at who you are. What are your strengths? What do you love to do? If I was to ask your best friend, your mother, your daughter, what is, listener, what is their strengths? What makes them a beautiful human being? Outline that, write that down. Then that's step one. Step two would be to then go ahead and say, what are all the different ways I could find business? From, wrapping your car with a wrap to doing a billboard to prospecting to door knocking, open houses, FISBOs, expireds, YouTube. We could go on and just write down every single thing of how you can find business. If you want a cheat code, go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, your favorite assistant, to help you with that. And then you write all the ways you could find business. And then you go back, that's step two. And now step three is you go back to step one and you say, okay, what are my unique behaviors of what I love to do? And then you look at the options and you say, okay, I love to relate with people. I love to throw parties. I love to, people give me energy. Then you look at some of the options and maybe you find client appreciation events that would align with that behavior. Maybe you find open houses. Maybe you find networking. Those would align with the options of somebody who gets energy from people. So now you have a map of, okay, now I'm going to do, these 1 to 3 things and do that first. I have 9 main lead generation sources today, yet I wouldn't recommend somebody to start with 9. I would recommend to start with 1 to 3, spend 1 to 3 hours a day, implementing that. And then as your business grows, then consider another 1 to 3 and then another 1 to 3. And so that's what I would recommend for another.
Yeah, that's great advice. I want to go back to when you first started. You said it took 6 months to get a deal. And then it seems like after that clicked, it went very fast, like, buying a brokerage a year later. What changed? What clicked?
I realize that, sales is not about pushing, it's about leading. And if you're listening to this right now and you're struggling, you're probably doing it wrong.
Mm.
So the moment that I stopped trying to sell and I started leading my clients, I started leading in the marketplace, I started helping people, that's when my business exploded. Now, at the time, as you mentioned earlier, you briefly mentioned about 2008 being sort of a struggle. It was. Yet I looked at what is the opportunity, just similar to what I just described for the listeners to go through. What's the opportunity? And at the time, it was bank owned homes and it was short sales. And so quickly, I looked to say, okay, well, what's a short sale? And at the time, none of my competitors wanted anything to do with a short sale. It was unknown territory and it was hard work.
Mhm.
And 1 out of 3 homeowners needed the service. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting there saying, okay, so there's a bunch of clients, prospective clients that need this. None of my competitors want to deal with it, and I'm going to have to bust my hump to be able to make it work. Call me all in.
Mhm.
And so I found the opportunity, and that's what I did. It's really just going back to, like, who am I? And where are my strengths? And I identified my strengths relatively early, though I didn't do it in a structured way that I can communicate it today. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. It wasn't until I reflected back to say, okay, well, how did I do that? And it was simply looking at, what are my strengths, what are the options. My strengths were, I'm a hard worker, I'm ethical, I bust I work hard and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then what's the opportunity? And at the time, short sales and bank owned properties. It took me about 18 months to get my first REO account. And then I was all in, and I just, for 1 to 3 hours. And actually at that time, it was more like 8 to 12 hours a day. I did my job.
So, talking about how to lead people versus being salesy, talk about the difference there and like maybe how your conversations are a little different.
Yeah, I coined a term called teach to sell. In fact, I wrote a book that's being published by Simon and Schuster, which is Teach to Sell: Why the Top Salesperson, never sell and what they do instead. And what Teach to Sell is a method that replaces selling with leading, using influence, psychology, and neuro linguistic programming to be able to guide people to get their own best decisions. And I'll give you a three-step framework of how to do that, which is to be, and I call this the consistent predictable income, c- um, this the CPI communication model, which is the number one, to be in rapport. Rapport is energy. We are spiritual beings in a human manifestation. And so you want to be able to connect with the other human being, the other spiritual being, to their energy. So you first pay attention to that person, you connect with them energetically. Then you ask them a depth question. So number one is to be in rapport. Number two is to ask a depth questions. And a depth question is a deep diving question. It would sound something like, so what is it that you're intending to do? Sell my house. Great. So tell me more about that. I'm getting a divorce. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me more about that? And you continue to dive deep until you really find like the true internal fear that they have, the true external fear that they have. And then you're the bridge from that internal external fear to be able to guide them to the internal external desire. So you start with understanding what their pain is, and then you understand to say, okay, well, I'm going to guide them to their pleasure, to their desire, and I'm the bridge to be able to do that. So number one is to connect energetically. That's developing rapport. Number two is to ask in-depth questions, and number three is to actively listen. And the definition of actively listening is to not just pay attention to the words, but pay attention to the meaning of the words, their energy. Just like number one is to connect with them energetically, but then you have to pay attention. If you've ever had somebody, you've been with a couple and they're out, buying a home, and you say to the husband and wife or the partners, hey, do you want to buy the home? And one says, yes. And the other says, yeah. Right. They both said yes, but they didn't both say yes. Their words were yes, but their energy was a hell yes and a hell no. And then that's something for you to pay attention to. Now, is it in your best interest to be able to guide that person with the hell no? Probably not. But that being said, you could then go back to asking adapt questions to identify what is it that's causing them to be hesitant. And now maybe you then identify that whatever it is that's causing them to be hesitant is something that they're willing to be able to, maybe they can adapt. You reframe it, and then you get them from that hesitant yes to the hell yes.
So, when you're with someone with like great energy and they're talking to you and you can play off of them, that's easy. You
Sure.
have the one word answers like, or, well, I'm waiting for, the recession's going to hit, prices are coming down. I'm waiting for interest rate, and you just get those personalities. How do you handle maybe somebody with low energy? Do you match it?
Yes, and
Yeah.
then you lead them. And so the way I did this yesterday, I went on an appointment yesterday, and the lady, it was 6 agents that we're meeting with, and I just got off the phone with them about an hour ago for them to commit to hire me. They're going through a divorce. I meet with the woman, and I go there and I say, "Well, tell me a little bit about your situation." And she says, "I already did." I said, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Could you tell me more?" She says, "No, I already did." I said, "Okay. I texted you." And she texted me like maybe 3 lines of the situation. I said, "Okay, great." And so I didn't like react to that. I just responded to it to say, "Okay, she's unwilling at this point to be able to be open." So I am at step 1 at that point, which is to gain rapport. So I'm not going to go to step number 2 by asking her to continue asking her questions when we don't even have rapport. So I took a step back, and then it took me maybe 20 minutes or so through the meeting before she opened up. And around 20 minutes or so, I start finding out all kinds of motivation. And so it goes from that closed off, you know, um, you know, um, conversation to one that then gets deep and meaningful. And then I was able to go backwards and say, okay, well, what do you think the price of your, if we were to list today, what do you think, what are you looking for? And I was able to go back to some basic conversation questions, but it's just again, you have to. That goes back into I was actively listening to her. I recognize one word answers, I'm not going to be able to get more than a one word answer until I gain a rapport. And so it's using the basic mechanism that I'm teaching you today to be able to accommodate what you just asked me.
Got it, got it. Well, no, I definitely believe in all that. And I think, yeah, when you're in person, it's a lot easier. Sometimes on the phone, though, that's always a little tougher when you're trying to get that expired and they go, I hate all y'all agents. And some of those people you just can't change. But do you have
Uh,
any advice on
yeah,
that with the
absolutely. Yeah, my job on the phone is create a relationship. So if I was to call you and you say, I hate all agents, I'm going to say, yeah, me too.
phone? Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I work with them every day. I
Hmm.
completely get it. You're probably getting bombarded. And by the way, I don't hate you agents. I love you
Yeah,
agents. Okay.
of course.
But but you're probably getting bombarded right now with all kinds of different phone calls and it's probably frustrating. I completely get it. I would be freaking pissed off if it was me, but I'm just curious. Are you still thinking to sell?
Yeah.
Right, and so it's about, if you get that's really not that's more of a roadblock. That's more of like you walk into the department store, I don't even know who actually shops at malls anymore, but once upon a time we did that, and you walk into the Nordstroms and, the person comes up, around the desk, "Can I help you?" And your instant answer is no.
Hmm.
That's all of that is. That's just it. Well, that and plus there's some negative energy there as well, right? But your job is as the sales professional is to get past that brick wall.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. I'm not going to claim I can always do it. I can claim that if there's an opportunity to be able to engage, I will find it. And when I get if I'm on a cold call and that happens, it's really truly about just listening to them and getting past that brick wall. My job on that call is not to necessarily even get the listing appointment or the listing. It's initially to get the conversation.
Hmm.
And if you approach it in that manner, say, like, my job is just to have a conversation and I'm calling someone who's going to be pissed off, who's getting bombarded with all these spam calls of my competitors, then I'm going to have to initially address the emotion. And then once I am able to address the emotion and I'm able to be able to get them to be, a little bit more willing to be open, then maybe there's a conversation to be had.
No, that's awesome. I think, yeah, lowering what your expectations are is huge. I think people are thinking every phone call, I'm getting a listing, I'm going to get a hot buyer. But it's like, no, I'm just a conversation, I'm just pushing the needle. That's all you're trying to do. Well, and I really love your consistency on every day. Like your job is to lead generate and lead convert. And I think people really need to realize that. Um, is there anything else you'd like to add? This has been awesome.
Absolutely. It's really, as you're listening to this, there's four pillars of a business. And so, what you want to understand is if you think about four pillars of the business, think about it like building a building, a three-story building with a basement. The basement would be the unstoppable business mindset. That's your belief in yourself. And you've got to be able to start there. You've got to be able to believe in yourself. Then the first story, the first floor of the building would be to be able to lead generate. You can lead generate by prospecting, marketing, and networking. Prospecting costs you time, marketing costs you money, and networking costs you both. So now that we believe in ourselves, so that's the foundation of your building, and now we lead generate 1 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Then, if you choose to do so, then now you're going to build an organization. Why would you want to build an organization? Because of those ways to lead generate, prospecting costs you money, that costs you time, excuse me, and marketing costs you money. Of those two, time has a limited capability. So if you want to grow your business, you don't have more time. You could create more money, but you don't have more time. So now you got to build the support around you. So again, it's the basement floor would be to believe in yourself. The first floor would be to lead generate. The second floor would be to build an organization, and then finally it would be to lead. So that's the third story. So leadership, which is to teach somebody else how to think, so that they can get what they want, would be the pinnacle of the third story of that building. And when you're able to focus on your business in that order, you're able to build a business that's going to result in consistent, predictable income.
Got it. Awesome. Well, how can people reach out to you? How can
I
they find you?
invite for you right now. We are selling Teach to Sell, why top salespeople never sell and what they do instead. So visit www.teachtosellbook.com. That's teachtosellbook.com. And the book is really about understanding how other people perceive the world through their senses, their beliefs, their values, their identity. and then understanding and knowing how to guide them ethically so that they make empowered decisions. So if you're looking to be able to have a consistent, predictable income, to be able to have no broke months in your business, get the book. And I promise you, it will be a step by step guide that will show you exactly how to do that. And I wrote this from a perspective of the hero of the book is the reader.
Okay.
The villain of the book is that thing that whispers in your ear that we all have, which is not good enough,
Mm.
not worthy. And then the guide is the book to be able to conquer that demon of I'm not good enough. And it's put together in a way that's going to walk you through the journey together. And by the end of reading that book, you'll have a very clear understanding of how you can have no broke months. And I'm so grateful that Simon Schuster, one of the top 5 publishing companies in the world, has chosen me to publish the book.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out. Well, thank you again, Dan. This was an awesome podcast. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll hang out next time.